Today we're diving into something a little different, just a single piece of writing, a short story. But it's one that really packs an emotional punch. You're immediately drawn into the protagonist's world as he embarks on this bus journey back to his ancestral home after decades away. It's a homecoming of sorts, but as the story unfolds, you realize it's not the kind of reunion he was expecting.
What's fascinating here is how the story uses the journey itself as a metaphor for the protagonist's inner turmoil. We see the landscape changing outside the bus window, bustling cityscapes giving way to tranquil countryside, eventually leading to a climb into the desolate mountains. It's almost as if the scenery is mirroring the emotional terrain he's about to encounter.
It's really masterful how the author sets the stage. Speaking of emotional terrain, we learn early on that he's heading back to the place where his parents are buried. He's 68 now and hasn't been back in 14 years since his father's passing. He even anticipates that his ancestral home is probably overgrown and neglected by now, which adds this layer of melancholy to the whole journey.
That detail about the abandoned home is significant. It's not just a physical description. It symbolizes a life left behind. Perhaps even a sense of guilt or regret for the protagonist. It makes you wonder, what is he hoping to find by returning to this place after all these years?
Right. Is it closure? Is it a yearning for connection? The story doesn't explicitly say, but you definitely feel that underlying tension, that pull between the past and the present. And this is where things start to get really interesting. The mood shifts dramatically when he arrives at his destination, a place called Nellicod. It's nighttime, there's a steady drizzle, and the bus stop is deserted. No streetlights, just the faint glow of the moon.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is using the setting to build suspense. The darkness, the isolation, the drizzle, it all creates this sense of unease, almost like the darkness itself is becoming a character in the story.
You can practically feel the chill in the air. And keep in mind, he's 68, so navigating this unfamiliar darkness probably isn't easy. But there's this line where he mentions feeling confident finding his way, suggesting a deep-rooted connection to this place, like a part of him never truly left.
This internal conflict, this tug of war between his past and present is so brilliantly portrayed, and just when you think it can't get any more atmospheric, another character is introduced and the tension really ratchets up a notch.
Yes. As he starts walking, he realizes he's being followed by the other passenger who got off the bus with him. Every time he glances back, he sees this stranger staring intently at him. Talk about creepy. He immediately assumes the worst, that this guy is out to get him. He starts walking faster, then breaks into a run, desperately trying to escape this perceived threat. It's almost as if his fear is distorting his perception of reality.
Exactly. The author is playing with our expectations here, making us question whether the protagonist's fear is justified or if it's his past haunting him in a way. And just when you think it can't get any worse, he reaches a three-way intersection and boom, there's another man just sitting there watching him. It's as if the author is deliberately trapping us in the protagonist's anxiety.
And then comes the twist. The man who was following him shouts to his companion, "Uni, quick, look, look!" And the other man is described as gaping at the protagonist. But instead of attacking, they just stand there, talking in hushed tones. It's this sudden shift from anticipated physical danger to something far more unsettling. You're left wondering, what are they seeing?
This is where the story takes a truly unexpected turn. The author allows us, the readers, to eavesdrop on their conversation. And it's not what you'd expect at all. They're not talking about robbing or harming the protagonist. They're talking about a strange presence. Something like smoke drifting in front of them. Their fear is palpable. But it's not directed at the protagonist as a person, but rather at something unknown, something that defies explanation.
So at this point, our poor protagonist is hiding in the bushes, listening to these two men freak out thinking they've encountered a ghost. And what's even more unsettling is their description. One of them says, "I was the only one who got off the bus at Nellicod. As I started walking, I noticed something like smoke drifting in front of me. That's when I saw you and started following."
And then the other man replies, "I saw it too, something like smoke." It's their language that's so striking. They're not describing a physical threat, but rather a bad feeling, a sense of something being off, almost supernatural.
And then they hightail it out of there, saying they're getting bad vibes and just want to go home. Talk about chills.
It's a brilliant use of foreshadowing, wouldn't you say? It sets the stage for the story's central twist, which I'm sure you've already guessed by now.
It's a masterpiece of suspense and psychological intrigue. But before we dive into that, I want to hear what stands out to you so far. What are you thinking, listener? What questions are popping into your head?
It's incredible how the author flips the script on this. We've been conditioned to expect a physical confrontation, a typical thriller scenario. But instead, we're confronted with something far more unsettling. The idea that our protagonist is the source of fear, that he's being perceived as a spectral presence.
It's a complete mind bender, and it really makes you reevaluate everything that came before. All those moments of suspense, the fear we felt alongside the protagonist, it was all based on a misperception. It makes you wonder how often our own fears and anxieties color our interpretation of reality.
Absolutely. The story is a powerful exploration of perspective, showing how easily we can jump to conclusions based on limited information and preconceived notions. It's like holding up a mirror to our own biases and judgments.
And speaking of mirrors, the story doesn't stop there. Our protagonist, now overcome with a mix of fear and confusion, decides to continue on to his ancestral home. Remember that abandoned, overgrown house he was picturing?
Well, what he finds is quite the opposite. He arrives to find the house brightly lit, the grounds meticulously cleaned, and people milling about. It's a scene that completely contradicts his expectations, adding another layer of intrigue to the unfolding mystery.
So, what's going on? Is this some kind of elaborate prank? Or are we venturing into the realm of the supernatural?
That's the beauty of the story. It leaves room for interpretation. The author doesn't explicitly confirm or deny the presence of the supernatural. Instead, it focuses on the protagonist's emotional experience, his yearning for connection, and the way grief can manifest in unexpected ways.
You're right. It's as if we're experiencing this through his eyes. So his reality, however skewed, becomes our reality. And as he approaches the spot where his parents are buried, he sees them, standing there, beckoning to him.
This encounter with his parents is pivotal. Is it a literal ghostly apparition, or is it a manifestation of his longing for connection, a projection of his grief? The story doesn't provide a definitive answer, leaving us to grapple with the possibilities.
It's definitely a powerful moment, regardless of whether we interpret it as real or imagined. He's overcome with emotion, weeping uncontrollably. You can feel the weight of his grief, his yearning for closure, and just as he's standing there, sobbing, he overhears a conversation between two other people.
This conversation is crucial, as it provides the key to unlocking the story's central mystery. One of them says, apparently his wish was to be buried near his parents. His children are bringing his body from the city. They should be here before dawn.
So, the smoke, the ghostly figure, the strange presence, it was him all along. They're witnessing his transition to the afterlife.
Exactly. The protagonist wasn't being pursued by attackers. He was already gone, returning to his roots, not in life, but in death.
Wow, this story just keeps getting deeper and deeper. It's no longer just a ghost story. It's about homecoming in its most profound sense. It's about finding peace and acceptance, not just from his parents, but within himself.
It's a powerful exploration of the cyclical nature of life and death, of returning to one's origins. And it raises fascinating questions about the nature of reality, perception, and the lingering presence we leave behind.
It's almost as if he was drawn back to this place, not by choice, but by some unseen force, to complete his journey and find his final resting place.
It's beautifully symbolic. The very place that represented abandonment and a life left behind becomes the place of his ultimate homecoming.
This story really makes you think about those moments when we feel a connection to something larger than ourselves, whether it's a place, a memory, or even a loved one who's passed on.
It speaks to the interconnectedness of human experience, how our lives, even in their finality, can ripple outward and touch others in unexpected ways.
And it's not always about grand gestures or achievements. It's about the small moments, the connections we make, the feelings we evoke. Like in this story, our protagonist was simply returning home, seeking solace and closure. Yet he inadvertently left a mark on those who crossed his path, even if it was just a fleeting moment of fear and wonder.
It's a poignant reminder that even when we're physically gone, our essence can linger, shaping the experiences of those who come after us.
What a profound thought. This deep dive has really taken us on a journey, hasn't it? We started with a simple bus ride and ended up exploring themes of homecoming, death, perception, and the lasting impact we have on the world. It's amazing how a single short story can pack so much depth and meaning.
It really does make you think about the impressions we leave behind, doesn't it? Those two men at the crossroads, they'll probably never forget that night. That encounter with what they believe to be a ghost.
It's a haunting thought, isn't it? Their perception of the protagonist was completely shaped by fear in the unknown. But it also speaks to the power of stories, how a single event can become a legend passed down through generations. And it's not always about grand gestures or heroic deeds. Sometimes the most impactful stories are those born from ordinary moments, like a man returning home for the last time. It makes you wonder, what stories will people tell about us? What will be our lasting legacy?
That's a question worth pondering. If we could choose, how would we want to be remembered? Would it be for our accomplishments, our kindness, or simply for the way we made others feel?
It's almost like this story is challenging us to be more mindful of the impressions we create, both big and small.
Absolutely. It encourages us to consider not just how we live our lives, but also how our absence will be felt. It's a reminder that our actions, our words, our very presence can have a ripple effect that extends far beyond our own lifetimes.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We started with a seemingly simple short story, but it's led us to some pretty profound insights about life, death, perception, and the enduring power of human connection.
It's a testament to the power of storytelling, how a single narrative can spark such deep reflection and inspire us to re-examine our own lives and legacies.
We hope this deep dive has given you something to think about, listener. Some new perspectives to consider as you navigate your own journey. Remember, even in the face of the unknown, even in those moments when fear might cloud your vision, there's always a story waiting to be told, a connection waiting to be made. And who knows, maybe your story will be the one that leaves a lasting impression on those who come after you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those imaginations running wild.